Hello, I'm Chris Littlewood. I work for Filtered, and we do online training in essential business skills. So those essential business skills are focused on productivity, on delivering the best outputs, adding the most value for a given input. And so today I wanted to talk about that. I wanted to talk about why that's our focus, why we've arrived at this focus on productivity in particular, and also explain how we seek to go about maximizing it, how we seek to go about optimizing productivity in an organization or in a workplace. So when we started out delivering training, writing training, then we started training in the use of Microsoft Excel. And the reason for that was that the founders of the business worked in a consultancy, a strategy consultancy, and it was a very quantitative consultancy, very focused on analysis. So a typical project would be, we go into a client, understand their business in a lot of detail, in a lot of quantitative detail, get data from the client databases on how the business worked, on the processes within the business, and the market that the business operated in, and we'd analyze it. And the main tool for that analysis was Microsoft Excel. So the thing that we took away from the business was that the way that Microsoft Excel was used there was a very effective way. So not just the way that it was used, but the way that it was learned. And the way that it was used there was through a focus. So rather than learn and deploy the full range of Excel's functionality, then consultants there would focus on a core of functionality that was particularly useful. So that core would be defined by what they were trying to achieve. So they're trying to achieve particular things with Excel, and they'd focus on a way of doing it rather than all of the ways of doing it. So that vastly reduced what you needed to learn straight away in order to be effective. And that meant that, of course, people were quick to learn it, but also because they were using those same skills all the time, then they were reinforced through application. So when we started a training business, we really wanted to emulate this model for not just learning but using skills. So in particular, emulate this focus on a few skills rather than trying to teach everything. And so when we set out with Microsoft Excel, what we did was we looked at the full range of Excel's functionality and a very broad range of what you might want to do with Microsoft Excel. And we really focused down on the essentials. And by the essentials, what we mean is we focused on the applications that were common, that lots of people wanted to do, the 80%, 90%, 95% of applications that people were really interested in putting Excel to. And then we were very selective about the Excel functionality that we taught in order to achieve that. So that meant that if there was a niche bit of functionality that was a very limited application, then we wouldn't teach that. Or if there were two ways of doing something, then we try hard to think about which is the better way and teach that one and strip out the material on the alternative. So that was the first way that we tried to emulate this, the way that skills were taught and learned at this consultancy firm. The other way was, because we were delivering the training online, then we could make it personalized to each individual. We could make it personalized with an algorithm. So we wrote an algorithm that took what we knew about the user, asked them some questions, understood a bit about themselves, their job, and how they wanted to apply the software, and then translated that into some training recommendations that were unique to them, that were their particular thing. So, having done that with Microsoft Excel and got that model to work of focus and personalization, then what we wanted to do was spot some other applications of it, other skills where we might apply the same approach. So the first thing that we did was try and look at other skills which had the same ubiquity as Microsoft Excel knowledge. So Microsoft Excel, one of the things that's common about it is almost every office worker, almost every knowledge worker needs some facility with it, whether that's to be an expert in it, maybe not, but to have some idea of how to use Microsoft Excel and how to get the most of it. And we wanted to spot other skills that had that same characteristic, that almost every knowledge worker needed them to a level in their job. And so that led us to produce training in courses in other ubiquitous software, so Outlook, Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, that sort of thing, but also non-IT skills, so teamwork, communication, management, project management. So we've taken that step to extend the approach to stuff that almost everyone needs in terms of training. But we also wanted to focus the training on making an impact. So the other thing that we'd done in those early days in Excel was think about how is this going to be applied. So we wanted to ground our training, ground the skills that we were trying to teach in the impact that they were going to have on the organization. And so that led us to this idea of outputs for inputs and therefore productivity. So what we wanted to do was think first about the output that we were going to have, the difference to output that we were going to make in an organization, and therefore give the skills that enabled that. And so that's just the very definition of productivity. It's maximizing the outputs that you can achieve for a given input. So the thing that defines the training that we offer, the training that we write ourselves, is this idea of key productivity drivers. It's the things that we think make a difference to knowledge workers in terms of their productivity on the job, can actually make them better at their work. So it's easy to make the case that productivity is important at a national or an economic level. So over the last years and months, there have been lots of stories in the press about the UK's productivity and how it lags a lot of its peers internationally, and also about how slow productivity growth has been recently in a lot of Western nations. So it's a big issue. It's easy to make the case it's a big issue nationally, but for us then, productivity is something a lot closer to home. So if you think about your organisation or your team, then it might well be that the outputs that you're seeking to deliver are the same as these economic ones. It might be that you're interested in maximising profit or maximising economic added value. But just as easily, it could be a local output that's a specific goal for your team, whether that's to optimize a key performance indicator, whether that's to deliver a product, deliver a particular service, deliver an objective that you've been set or that you've set yourselves. So this notion of productivity is very flexible. It applies not just at the very high level, but also at any level, at a team level or even an individual level. So there are quite a few drivers of productivity generally. This list here of 5 in the pink box are from the Office for National Statistics. So they've picked on these 5 drivers of, actually in this case mostly national productivity, but it applies at organisational level to a large extent. So there's investment, so the availability to capital, so that if you have a good idea, if there is a project that's worth doing, then there's money available to fund it. It doesn't get stymied for lack of cash. There's innovation, so fostering an environment in which new ideas are born and that they can be nurtured to the point where they start to add value. There's competition, so some mechanism for selecting amongst those ideas. So the good ones flourish and the poor ones are outcompeted by the better ones. There's enterprise, so an environment in which new companies can be founded and challenge the status quo, challenge incumbents and an orthodox approach. And then finally there's skills, which of course is our interest. So skills are by no means the only factor that affects productivity. But I would say that they are one of the most controllable factors, because if you look at investment, well, that's largely can be at the mercy of economic performance nationally or company performance financially. It's not always within your control. Innovation is, you can alter that, you can encourage that, but it's tricky, it's difficult to create a culture of innovation. It takes a lot of time, it's got a long payback. Competition and enterprise, those are more naturally in the control of regulators or government. They're not usually you don't usually as a company or a team have a lot of control over how you're exposed to those factors. And then finally, comes back to skills. So this is the one driver that we think everyone is in control of, everyone can make a difference to. And so just because we can pull it, it is one of the more important levers to pull if we want to seek to improve productivity. We think this is a great way of looking at training as a driver of productivity, not just because we think it's the right one, that it keeps you with a good focus, but also it's a great way of making the case for training, giving it appropriate focus within an organization. You know, the senior people in an organization focused on the performance, on outputs, and so if we talk about training in those terms, then we're talking the language that they're interested in, that that's top of their minds. So I hope I've given you an idea of why we focus on productivity, why we think it's important and worth thinking about training in those terms. What I'd like to do now is explain our approach to optimizing productivity, how we think that you can take training, deliver it in a way that really seeks to focus on this problem, on this goal of optimizing productivity. So when we think about skills, we're thinking very much there about individuals. So it's individuals who are going to acquire those skills and deploy them. And so it's very much about the input that an individual can offer. And the most important input that an individual can offer, that they can put in order to deliver these outputs, is their own time. And so the productivity question here becomes very much about what can you do, what outputs can you achieve with the time. So taking that, making that even more real, bringing that really down to earth, then it's about your day. It's about how you choose to spend the time in your day, how you add value with those hours, not just within the day, but so a lot of the work that you do in any day will have benefits there, will have benefits further down the line. But it's about optimizing the time you spend, the decisions you make, how you spend your time, and when you're occupied in those activities, how productive you are. So what we wanted to do in thinking about designing training with this productivity goal was to design a skills framework that had time at its core, that was focused on use of time, making that productive, turning that into useful output. So let me just explain that framework. So this is all about the choices that you make in deciding what to work on. So if you think about a day, at the start of any day, then you can prioritize your time. You can decide to an extent what you work on within the constraints set to you. So the first thing that you could do with your time is make some decisions. So that might be low-level decisions like simple prioritization, planning your day, what am I going to do today? Or it might be higher level stuff, like what should be the priorities for my team, what should be the strategic direction for the organization. There'll be decisions that have a specific focus that come along, of course, what should we do about this particular problem, or how should we solve this issue? So you could spend time deciding, you could spend time creating, and so by creating, then I just mean making something. So that might be making something physical, so building a widget or creating a deck of slides that you sell to a customer, or it might be a more intermediate output, and for knowledge workers it often would be a more intermediate output, something like a piece of analysis, building a spreadsheet model, writing a report, producing a deck of slides. So you could spend your time creating something on your own, personally. Or you could choose to collaborate, and that could be formally in a meeting. You could work jointly with someone on something. You could collaborate informally, asking someone's advice, seeking to influence someone. Or you could manage. So this is, in a sense, a more formal aspect of collaboration. You could choose to guide someone through a process. You could manage a project, try and tweak the way resources were allocated. You could manage the finances of the company, understand how things were going, and manage the cash available. And then finally, you could grow. So this means simply investing time in improving your performance in the future. So that might be with some training, so you're improving your skills explicitly, or it might be something as simple as improving your effectiveness for the rest of the day by taking a break, going to the gym. So the idea behind this set of potential categories for activity is that it's comprehensive and it covers all of the ways that you might choose to allocate your time. And just to try and bring it to life a bit, I just want to overlay some skills onto it. So as I said at the start, then over on the left there you've got the decide category. So at the foundational level, so these are the skills that you need on sort of day one of a job that you'd expect anyone to have to be fit for work. Then there's a prioritization skill. You need to be able to make decisions about what the best thing is to work on, and make decisions about what the best use of your time is. As you gain seniority and sophistication in the way that you do your job, then those decide skills become higher level. So the decision making might apply more broadly within the organization, but you're just more familiar with the subject matter of your job and can make better decisions that affect customers, that affect other teams, that affect your own team. And then at the top level of this framework, then you have what we call transformational skills. So these are skills that just affect, improve, optimize the way that the other skills work. So to take the decision-making example again, if I have a set of tools that I can work with that help me with my creative thinking, I can come up with ideas, I can generate ideas and sift them that inform my decision-making. I can make more robust decisions because I'm better able to imagine what the potential solutions might be and think outside the box. So this applies across the framework, that there are low-level skills that you might expect someone on day one, year one of a job or of their career. And as you get higher level, then you've got skills that are more transformative, that have more of an impact, add more value, both to their own work and across the organization. So that's the framework, that's the way we see the skills that we're interested in working with. This is a set of skills which are built from the way that people spend time and focused on the way that they add value. So it's all about productivity. What I'd like to do now is explain our approach to delivering those skills, to how we actually train. So we're called Filtered, and right at the heart of what we do is filtering, by which we simply mean stripping down the content, stripping down the training, stripping down what we try and teach to the things that each individual really needs and adds most value to them. So specifically what we do generally is we take a body of training, a syllabus, and then we strip out things that individual already knows, and we strip out things that that individual doesn't really need. Perhaps the way they want to apply the training isn't the average way. They want to apply it in a specific direction, and so we strip out things that aren't particularly relevant to the way they want to apply the training. So what we're seeking to do with any of our learners is give them a filtered, reduced set of training objectives. It's easy for them to consume, focused on what they need, and personalised in that way. In order to do that, then we need a couple of things. First of all, we need that training to be quite granular in little bite-sized chunks, so that we can personalise it properly. It's no use having great huge wadges of training that we're trying to select from. We need small, bite-sized, consumable pieces of training, so that when we personalise from those bite-sized pieces of training, it's a truly individual experience, and those individuals are getting stuff that's particularly well-fitting for their needs profile. The other thing we need is an algorithm, because it would be impractical or at least uneconomic to make these sorts of decisions manually. We have to rely on an algorithm that can learn something about the learner and select from the training to give them the recommendations that they need. And the algorithm needs data. So the main thing that the algorithm needs is information about what was useful from the stuff we've recommended in the past. So if we've recommended something to a learner who found it to be particularly useful, we can learn from that in our future recommendations, and vice versa. If we give something that someone found to be useless, then that's useful feedback. We gather that through our platform and apply it to our future recommendations. We do that automatically with the algorithm. It learns itself, so it's continually improving as we get more feedback, more users. So just to go into a little bit of detail as to how that recommendations process works. So the way that the personalisation works, the way that the algorithm works, is the same way that algorithms work that sit behind a whole host of online personalisation services. So a simple example would be Amazon. So Amazon, when they make recommendations to you about what you might want to buy from them, then they're doing that based on the stuff that they know about you. your purchase history and your whatever demographic information they've got on you, and they're using that information to link you to other customers of Amazon. And so if they can find someone similar to you in their purchase history, in their level of spend, what they bought, what they're interested in, they can make a pretty good guess at what you might be interested in from the other things that person has bought. So in the same way, what we try to do is build some information about the individual. Now, the information we are seeking to build about individuals is focused on their job, what the demands of it are, what's important to them in terms of the tasks they need to do, what they're confident in, what they're not confident in, and measures of their own proficiency. So we ask them a set of questions that build a profile that's all focused about on how they work, how they're productive at work, what they spend their time on. So each learner answers a questionnaire and fills in this information, and we learn this from them at the start of their journey with us. And that information links them in the same way that Amazon's algorithms do to other learners. So we can identify learners from the past who are similar to you, either across the board or in a particular respect. So having identified similar learners, then the key thing is that we have feedback from those similar learners on the bits of training that they found useful. So what we can do is take those similar learners, take what they found useful, and blend it together to produce a course that's tailored for you based on the stuff that other people who are similar found to be valuable. So that's our approach. It's personalisation, it's data-driven, and it's focused on need, focused on what people actually find valuable. What I'd now like to do to sum up is to explain how we blend those two things together. So how we blend this idea of a skills framework focused on productivity and a personalisation, so we're recommending stuff that people really need together. And this is the thing that we're working on at the moment. So already you can come to us and we can give you a course that will be personalised to your learners, and so it's an efficient way for them to learn. We can also take content from you and put that on our platform and personalise that so that you can save time in the way that training's delivered in your organisation. But the thing that we're building will allow us to make recommendations from across this productivity portfolio to optimise the performance of people and to understand organisationally where your strengths and weaknesses are, where your interventions are making a difference and where they're not. So this is the skills framework again, with a load of individual skills on it. And what we're seeking to do is simply provide a personalised path to each individual through this skills framework. So first of all, we're identifying skills at a high level, whether that's prioritisation, research, management, mindfulness, creative thinking. But then within those skill areas, we're personalising it in the way I've described algorithmically, so that each of those skills is taught in a way that fits the needs of that particular individual. So we've got a path that covers the whole of this suite that supports productivity, but which is personalised to the individual needs. And just to conclude, so this is, we're working on this at the moment. We're testing it back at the office. We have, it'll be released in the summer. And what we have here is just a few screenshots. So most of these screenshots are about building that profile. We're asking people about how they spend their time, what they find important, what they're confident in, what their actual proficiency is measured by subject matter questions. And then this last screenshot is a little bit difficult to read, but it's benchmarking. So what this is doing is, once you've completed the questionnaire, then we're giving the learner some feedback as to where they are in terms of this skills framework relative to the rest of the population, relative to where they want to get to. And we'll also make recommendations of the sort that I described before. That was everything I wanted to say about productivity, but we are at stand 24, just behind us over there. Actually at 4 o'clock, if you can last that long, there's, well, it's described as bubbly. I was going to say champagne, but it might not be champagne. So if you can last that long, please come and speak to us at 4 o'clock, but if not, please come and speak to us before then. Yeah, whether it's about productivity or the other things we do, individual courses or taking content and personalising it for your learners, then please come and see us. Thank you very much, everyone. Cheers.